Good morning, ninth grade. Today's lesson, September 28th, I want to go over the comparative and superlative in a more detailed manner because some of you had questions about this grammar form. So, in your student book, page 14, the comparative and superlative. اللي هي الصفات المقارنة والصفات التفضيل. صفات المقارنة is the comparative وصفات التفضيل اللي هي superlative. So we have an adjective يعني big, casual, cheap, classic, colorful. Those are all adjectives. We put them in the adjective part. For the comparative, لعمل صفة المقارنة we add an ER لنهاية الصفات القصيرة ثم we add than للصفات الطويلة ونكتب more or less. So for the adjective we have big. For the comparative, remember the rules that we talked about in the previous worksheet that I've given you last. So if we have one syllable word, a short word, okay, for the adjective, big is one syllable. So for the comparative, we have to add ER. So it becomes bigger than. For the superlative, we have to add EST. We add EST for the one syllable word. For short words, we add EST, and we have to put the in front of the adjective. So remember, we add a ER to one syllable word, short words, we add ER, and we add than after the adjective. For the superlative, we add the or the in the beginning, and we add EST to the adjective. So big becomes bigger than for the comparative. For the superlative, it becomes the biggest. Casual becomes more casual than. We cannot say casualer, casualist. No, we say more casual than. And for the superlative, it becomes the most casual. يعني كتير عادي. Cheap. Cheap, we can add an ER. Cheap is also one syllable, so we can add an ER. So we say cheaper than. Cheaper than. For the superlative, it becomes the cheapest. The cheapest. يعني كتير رخيص. Classic. Classic, we cannot say classicer or classicist. No, those are not words. So for the adjective classic, it becomes more classic than for the comparative, and for the superlative, it becomes the most classic. يعني قديم، إشي قديم كتير. Going to colorful. Colorful. We cannot say colorful or colorfulist. No. We say more colorful than. More colorful than. So COLOURFUL than. That's for the comparative. For the superlative, it becomes the most colorful. The most colorful. Now remember, we said for the one syllable, we add an ER to the comparative, and we add EST for the superlative. For the one syllable that ends in E, for example, nice, it's a one syllable word, it's a short word, and it ends in an E. So for the comparative, we just add R. If the word ends in E, we just add R. And for the comparative, for the superlative, we add ST. ST, so it becomes nice, comparative nicer, and for the superlative, the nicest. This is just an example. So going to formal. Formal is a two-syllable word. two-syllable words that end in a Y, for example, happy. Happy is two syllables and it also ends in Y. For the comparative, we remove the Y and we add I-E-R. For the superlative, we remove the Y for happy and we add I-E-S-T. So, adjective happy, comparative happier, I-E-R, superlative happiest, the happiest. That's for the two syllables ending in a Y. Now, for two or more syllables, for example, beautiful. Beautiful is three syllables. We cannot say beautifuler or beautifulest. No. Beautiful is the adjective. We add more to the comparative, like I said, so it becomes more beautiful. And for the superlative, we say the most beautiful. For example, we have three girls. I cannot say for one of the three girls, you're more beautiful. No, I say you are the most beautiful. You are the most beautiful because we're comparing more than two. More than two. If it's two girls, then I would tell one, you are more beautiful. You are more beautiful because I'm only comparing two. So when we're comparing more than three, that's superlative. Remember. Going down to practical. إيش يعني practical? Practical يعني عملي. Practical is our adjective. We cannot say practicaler or practicalist, so we say more practical than for the comparative, and for the superlative we say the most practical. The most practical. يعني أكتر إشي practical. Smart. Smart is one syllable. Smart. So we can add an ER. So it becomes smarter than for the comparative. And for the superlative, it becomes the smartest because we're comparing more than two. So we say the smartest. And our final word is tidy. إيش يعني tidy? Tidy means مرتب. Tidy is our adjective. For the comparative, we say tidy. Tidy is also two syllables. Remember, tidy. So and it ends in a Y. Remember, I said two syllables ending in Y. For the comparative, we remove the Y and we add I-E-R here. So we removed the Y in tidy and we added I-E-R, so it became tidier than. For the superlative, we also removed the Y and we added I-E-S-T. Remember, two or more syllables, we add more and we remove the Y. Two or more syllables. Two or more syllables, yes. Tidy. Tidy is two. So we add than after it and we add the in front of the superlative. Okay, so that's that for the comparative and superlative. Oh, and one more thing. There are it's صفات الشاذة, like the exceptional ones, which are good, يعني جيد. For the comparative, it becomes better, because we cannot say gooder or goodest. No. For the adjective good, يعني جيد, it becomes better for the comparative, يعني أحسن, and it becomes the best for the superlative, يعني الأحسن, يعني الأحسن, the most, the best. We also have bad. Bad يعني سيء. For the comparative, it becomes worse, W-O-R-S-E, يعني أسوأ. And for the superlative, it becomes the worst. The worst, W-O-R-S-T, يعني الأسوأ. الأسوأ, I believe. We also have many and much. Many and much means كتير. For the comparative, many and much become more, and for the superlative, that many and much becomes the most, يعني الأكتر. And we have little, يعني قليل. Little for the comparative becomes less, and little for the superlative becomes the least, L-E-A-S-T, يعني الأقل يعني أقل شيء. And our final word is far يعني بعيد. Far for the adjective becomes farther for the comparative. FARTHER farther يعني أبعد. And for the superlative it becomes the furthest or the farthest يعني FURTHEST يعني الأبعد. Or we can use further, furthest, or farthest with the A or U. Those are the, the exceptional ones: good, bad, many, much, little, and far. We have to memorize these, remember them, and that's it for the comparative and superlative. I hope you got a better understanding of this comparative and superlative. And that's it for today's lesson.